Thanks, Maddie. That was great. We're going to have Anupama Pilbrow read now. She's the co-editor of the Suburban Review. I met this lady in my first ever poetry class at university, and she blew me away. So stay in here and read something.
Thanks, Eliza. You and Augie blow me away with Fead. Thanks for having me. I've never actually had the chance to talk about the stories behind my poems. Just like Matt said before, it always takes up too much time in a reading. So this is exciting. This first poem is a poem about waking up before your alarm clock. It's called "The Bone is a Long and Solid Bone," and it's actually in the zine for this event as well. The bone is a long and solid bone. It is ripped out of the leg or the arm, sometimes the stomach. The cold eats it from the inside, sliding marrow. Down the tunnel of mouth, the pain of flesh is relief. Hold the bone and scrape it hard against concrete or volcanic rock to shear away soft and round bits until the bone is a weapon. The bone is a long and solid bone. The bone belongs in the ground and in your hand at the same time. The bone is a tongue. The bone is a labial consonant, and some languages lack the bone, but have seen it introduced with English. The bone is a long and solid bone. The morning has not arrived, and your hands are full of blood. They cannot clench it. When I wrote that one, I think what I wanted was to communicate something about the body, something quite visceral. And I hadn't had a way to do that with words before, and I kind of wanted to be able to use words to recreate these bodily experiences. Like when you wake up in the morning and you try and make a fist with your hands and you can't because there's so much kind of blood and you're numb from not having moved for 8 hours. So I wanted to be able to recreate that, but I think that a focus on the body and being able to create feelings in the body through words is really awesome. So this one wasn't really a story behind this poem, it's more like a motive for why I wrote it. My goal is kind of to be able to use a poem to make you feel like when fingernails scratch on a chalkboard. And that's not easy to do, I think. So that was one of my body poems, and the next one, or the next few ones, I think are going to be more poems that are love letters to my family. This one is called Ondine's Curse, and it refers to when we sleep, our breathing is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, so we breathe involuntarily when we're asleep or unconscious. And there's a condition called Ondine's Curse where people don't have that control, that involuntary control. And so when they're asleep, they don't have control over their breathing and they can't breathe. And the reason that I called this poem that is a bit convoluted. When I was a kid, my parents used to read folk tales to me and my sister, and one of the folk tales, and I'm gonna butcher it because it was years ago and I can't really remember it. But there's a prince who has to complete certain tasks in order to marry a princess in some far off, exotic land. And he fails to complete the tasks, and his punishment is to be cursed by having a burning hot grain of sand always in his foot or in his toe or something like that, somewhere where he can't get at it, but it causes him intense, unrelieved pain. And I wanted to find out what that story was so that I could tell someone, because I couldn't remember, the full details of the folktale. And so I Googled it, and I couldn't find it. But I ended up on a page full of all these respiratory disorders, and Ondine's Curse was on it, and so it seemed like a relevant connection. Holed up by the banks of the river, holding a man in one hand and a man in the other, he claims, "Oh yeah, I can lift any weight you ask, yeah. Just tell me, what it is, I'll do it. I can feel the inside of my lungs itching like a burning grain of sand embedded there will never come out. Do you know of Ondine's curse? This failure of autonomic control of breathing. Yes, it is a misnomer. After you walk in the streets a little, you scratch your face, and if you inspect the fingernails, there is a fine black grit beneath them from the polluted air. This third poem is called The Spice Pains, and it's a poem that I've never actually managed to get published anywhere. And when I was trying to think about like a story that I could tell about why I wrote it, I don't know, it's kind of like it's a bit silly. There's like a Friends episode in the first season when Rachel hasn't like realized that she's secretly in love with Ross, and she starts dating some guy called Russ, who's played by David Schwimmer, the guy who plays Ross. And all of the rest of the friends can recognize why she's dating Russ, because he looks like Ross and is like really similar to Ross. And it's really funny because he makes them uncomfortable because of how similar he is to Ross. And then at the end of the episode, like somebody points it out to Rachel, and she realizes that Russ looks exactly like Ross, and she freaks out and like mimes being nauseated by it and like disgusted. And I thought that like nausea and disgust was a really cool like response to this act of recognition, because she was missing something, and then she got some information and it made her want to throw up. So I don't know, maybe that like lowbrow Friends reference is why I've never gotten this poem published. Anyway, my mom is from Maharashtra, and in Maharashtra the landscape is, there's really like kind of red earth, and the trees are like silvery green, and it's always very dry in the dry season, and I only visit in the dry season. Scintillate that grand, grand exodus, that people once accustomed. Well, no place is better, each next my vision. A raging pride, those reds and eucalypts raise bile and are swallowed without a sign. And the ragged contours in humid, humid air smell sewer drains. That homesick, the spell reels. That homelessness ingrains, and hot kachoris chafe the lips I feel the loss, the spice pains. Stray lives tumble dry each trip, the stereo remarks. Oh, the generosity of women's hips, and Lokronak hovers, floats the humid air. The Bombay church, but that woman's breast is nowhere. Maybe the Friends reference is like a bit hidden. This next poem is for my grandmother, and these last two poems are like definitely love letters to my family. My grandma fled Pakistan, or what would be Pakistan, during partition, and well, she's dead now, and I never really got the chance to ask her about her experiences, and I realized, I suppose, that there's like thousands and thousands of hours of her life that I'll never really have access to. And I guess this poem is like a response to that. It's called Thief, or Chor. Refuge no Hindu, the beefsteak British revulsion culls Muslim Karachi. The unforgiven and exotic hate meant the beef she didn't eat, and the 5 children remaining got given names to suit. Mother, the Barish, Varsha, the monsoon. Fear and asthma, epilepsy, the inner revulsion to crosses. Translated in 5 yards of silk, never without worn irony. I'll go down in a drought like a rain of bullets. And this last one's called Pura, or whole. I suppose it's because I look for like moments of sameness and difference between my mother and myself. And each year, like, those bits of sameness and those bits of difference get more obvious. And I wrote this poem like 2 years ago, but every time I look at it again, like, I see that there's more connection between my mother and myself. We moved to Australia 10 years ago, and the climate in Australia, for some reason, like, gives us both chilblains. I don't know, maybe nobody here probably knows what chilblains are. Yep. During winter, like, the capillaries in your hands, well, in my hands and my mom's hands, can't deal with the changes in temperature from inside and outside houses. And so all these capillaries burst in, like, your fingers and your toes, and some people get it in their ears and their nose as well. And it's like your hands just don't want you to be in the same country. They want you to go back to the place that they grew up in. And I grew up in America, and I didn't get them in America. Anyway, pura, whole. The milk carton on the shelf in the fridge sits gassed and frozen like me and my mother, whose fingers and toes rend and swell in the winter here. Frostbite, someone calls it, when the flesh goes off. I am my whole self all the time, except when cold or angry. I do not belong here, I say. Who would belong anywhere so crazy? Kya pagal, kaise pagal. This is a country where people don't understand insulation. Thank you.